The sterile, fluorescent glow of the Mossad Situation Room did little to alleviate the pervasive gloom that clung to its occupants. Across the vast, polished table, screens flickered with maps, data, and grimacing mugshots, each image a testament to a growing, unsettling failure. For decades, the Mossad had prided itself on its impenetrable intelligence network, its uncanny ability to anticipate and neutralize threats before they could fully materialize. Yet, for the past 18 months, a shadow organization had mocked their prowess, slipping through their fingers like smoke. This was not merely a critical intelligence failure. It was an existential crisis. The entity they codenamed Cerberus was unlike any adversary they had ever encountered. It was a hydra-headed monster, its cells operating seemingly independently, yet coordinated with chilling precision. Their targets were varied, their methods brutal, and their motives obscured by layers of digital obfuscation and fanatical dedication. From cyber attacks that crippled national infrastructure to surgical assassinations of key political figures, Cerberus demonstrated an unprecedented level of sophistication. They left no fingerprints, no witnesses, only devastation and a growing sense of helplessness within the world's most elite intelligence agencies. Mossad, once the gold standard, was now reeling, its reputation tarnished by repeated, humiliating defeats. The global threat was palpable, a chilling whisper of chaos poised to erupt. Director Alara Cohen, a woman whose sharp intellect and unyielding resolve had propelled her through the ranks, felt the weight of these failures crushing down on her. Her eyes, usually alight with strategic fire, now held a deep-seated weariness. Her subordinates, once brimming with confidence, now moved with the defeated air of soldiers routed in battle. The traditional methods, the meticulous surveillance, the deep cover assets, all had proven futile against Cerberus's elusive nature. Desperation gnawed at her, pushing her towards a radical, almost unthinkable solution. She knew it would be met with outrage, perhaps even outright rebellion, but the stakes were too high for conventional thinking. Her proposal, whispered first to her most trusted advisors, was simple yet audacious: to recruit an outsider, a ghost from their past, a man whose legend was steeped in both unparalleled success and unspeakable tragedy. He was a relic, a weapon forged in a different era, one they had long since tried to forget. The very mention of his name sent shivers down the spines of veteran agents. He was a mercenary, a phantom, known only by his call sign, Kestrel. Kestrel, a man whose existence was a carefully constructed void, had vanished from the world years ago, retreating into a self-imposed exile after a mission that had ripped his life apart. He was a whisper in the darkest corners of clandestine operations, a legend passed down through hushed tones, a man who could achieve the impossible, but whose methods were as brutal as they were effective. He was a force of nature, untamed and unpredictable, and precisely the kind of weapon Ilara now believed they needed to combat Cerberus. Her decision was not born of hope, but of absolute necessity. The impossible mission required an impossible man. Kestrel was a broken instrument, a lethal paradox, but he was their last, desperate gamble against a threat that promised to unravel the very fabric of global stability. The world teetered on the precipice, unaware that its fate might soon rest in the hands of a man who had long abandoned humanity, a ghost now summoned from his lonely shadows to face a new, terrifying darkness. Ilara Cohen embarked on a journey shrouded in secrecy, her destination a remote, unnamed corner of the world, a place where the modern world's frantic pace had yet to intrude. She tracked Kestrel through whispers and fragmented data, following a trail deliberately obscured by years of meticulous self-erasure. Her path led her to a dilapidated fishing village nestled on a craggy coastline, its silence broken only by the rhythmic crash of waves against ancient rocks. There, amidst the weathered faces of local fishermen, she found him. Kestrel, or what remained of him, sat by the sea, his back to the world, a figure etched in solitude. His once sharp features were now softened by the unforgiving sun and etched with lines of profound weariness, his eyes holding the distant, haunted gaze of a man who had seen too much. When Ilara approached, he did not turn, acknowledging her presence with a stillness that spoke volumes. His voice, when it finally came, was a gravelly murmur, devoid of curiosity, steeped in a profound disinterest. He refused, his rejection immediate and absolute. He spoke of ghosts and of promises broken, of the futility of fighting endless wars. The world had taken everything from him, he explained, and he had long since ceased to care for its fate. His words were not born of malice, but of a deep, festering wound, a betrayal that had severed his ties to the very concept of duty. A fleeting image flashed through Ilara's mind. A mission gone horribly wrong years ago, a crucial extraction botched, leading to the loss of Kestrel's entire team, including the woman he loved. An operative whose vibrant spirit had once been the only light in his shadowed existence. That catastrophic failure, orchestrated by unseen forces within their own ranks, had been the crucible that forged his self-imposed exile, leaving him with an unshakable conviction that loyalty was a weakness and trust a fatal flaw. Ilara, however, was not easily deterred. She painted a vivid, chilling picture of Cerberus, of their escalating threat, of the innocent lives that would be extinguished if they were not stopped. She appealed to the vestiges of the man she knew he once was, the legendary operative who had always stood for something greater than himself. She spoke of the children, the vulnerable, the sheer, unadulterated evil that Cerberus represented. Then, with a subtle shift in her tone, she introduced a different angle, a carefully placed seed of suggestion. She spoke of the unique opportunity this mission presented, not just for global security, but for a form of retribution, a chance to dismantle the very systems that allowed such betrayals to fester. It was a delicate manipulation, a veiled hint that perhaps, in bringing down Cerberus, he might also find a way to settle old scores, to finally lay his own ghosts to rest. A flicker, almost imperceptible, ignited in Kestrel's eyes. It was not hope, but a cold, calculating spark of something akin to grim purpose. He turned, his gaze finally meeting hers, piercing through her with an intensity that sent a shiver down her spine. His terms were unequivocal, delivered with a chilling clarity that left no room for negotiation. Absolute autonomy, no oversight, no questions asked. He would choose his own team, operate outside all established protocols, and answer to no one but himself. If Mossad wanted him, they would have to unleash him, fully and without reservation. He was a weapon, he reminded her, and weapons did not operate under committee rule. Ilara agreed, the words a raw concession, but a necessary one. She knew the risks, the profound ethical compromises, but she also knew that conventional tactics had failed. Kestrel's reluctant agreement was not born of patriotism or renewed idealism, but from that subtle, insidious whisper of personal vengeance, a flicker of hope for redemption through destruction. He would hunt Cerberus, yes, but he would also hunt the shadows that had haunted him for so long. Within days, Kestrel vanished from the fishing village, leaving behind only the lingering scent of salt and regret. He moved with a renewed, albeit grim, efficiency, assembling his team not from Mossad's ranks, but from the forgotten corners of the intelligence world. There was Spectre, a master of digital espionage, whose past was as murky as his code. Echo, a former Special Forces medic with a knack for explosives and an unnervingly calm demeanor. And Wraith, a chameleon, a master of disguise and infiltration, whose identity shifted as seamlessly as smoke. Each was an outcast, a ghost in their own right, drawn to Kestrel's raw intensity, united by their shared disillusionment with conventional warfare. They were a disparate group, unorthodox and dangerous, but in Kestrel's eyes, perfectly suited for the impossible task ahead. His true motive, Ilara now understood, transcended national security. It was deeply, profoundly personal, a desperate quest for an elusive peace that only vengeance could offer. The newly formed team, a clandestine unit operating entirely off-book, plunged immediately into the murky depths of Cerberus's elusive network. Kestrel, ever the strategist, eschewed traditional intelligence gathering, deeming Mossad's established protocols too slow, too compromised. Instead, he directed Spectre to unleash a torrent of digital probes, not seeking direct information but rather anomalies, ripples in the global data stream that might betray Cerberus's hidden movements. Echo, with his uncanny ability to read terrain and human behavior, began tracking whispers, rumors circulating in the darker corners of the underworld, piecing together fragments of conversations, deciphering cryptic coded messages exchanged between seemingly innocuous individuals. Wraith, meanwhile, vanished into the urban sprawl, a phantom weaving through shadows, observing, listening, and planting subtle digital breadcrumbs designed to lure out unsuspecting operatives. Their unconventional methods, raw and unrefined by bureaucratic oversight, yielded results faster than Alara Cohen had dared to hope. The first tangible piece of the Cerberus puzzle emerged from a convergence of Spectre's data and Echo's street-level intelligence. A high-profile target, a seemingly legitimate businessman named Viktor Volkov, known for his vast shipping empire and rumored, though unproven, ties to illicit arms trafficking. Volkov was not Cerberus's leader, but he was a critical financial conduit, a faucet for their deadly operations, and his elimination would cripple their immediate logistical capabilities. Kestrel's plan for Volkov's infiltration was a masterpiece of calculated risk and surgical precision. It involved a multi-pronged approach. Echo would create a diversion at Volkov's primary warehouse, drawing away security, while Wraith, disguised as a new hire, would gain access to his heavily fortified private office. Spectre, from a remote location, would navigate Volkov's complex digital defenses, providing real-time intel and disabling surveillance. Kestrel himself would be the ghost in the machine, moving unseen, ready to exploit any weakness to ensure Volkov's capture or neutralization. The operation unfolded with an almost balletic tension in the heart of a bustling port city. Echo's controlled explosion at the warehouse perimeter sent a plume of smoke skyward, triggering alarms and diverting patrol units. Wraith, impeccably dressed and carrying forged credentials, sailed through security checkpoints, her expression perfectly calibrated between eager new employee and slightly overwhelmed novice. Spectre's fingers danced across his keyboard, a silent symphony of keystrokes dismantling firewalls and scrambling cameras. Kestrel, a shadow among shadows, slipped through service corridors, his movements fluid, his mind a step ahead of every guard, every sensor. They were moments from Volkov's private office, the mission teetering on the precipice of success, when disaster struck. A critical security feed, which Spectre had confirmed as disabled, flickered back to life, broadcasting Wraith's exact location to Volkov's elite private security force. Simultaneously, a coded message, originating from within Mossad's encrypted network, flashed across Spectre's screen. Operation compromised. Stand down. It was an overt betrayal, a clear attempt to sabotage Kestrel's team and protect Volkov. Kestrel's instincts, honed by years of impossible odds, screamed betrayal. He immediately aborted Wraith's direct approach, redirecting her to a pre-planned escape route, her cover blown. He barked orders to Spectre, demanding a trace on the internal Mossad signal, his voice a low growl of controlled fury. But the damage was done. Volkov's security, now fully aware of the threat, moved with brutal efficiency. Echo, still at the warehouse, found himself ambushed by a unit that seemed to know his exact position. A brutal firefight ensued, the sounds of gunfire echoing through the night. Kestrel, despite his quick thinking, could not prevent every casualty. Echo, caught in a crossfire he should have anticipated, fell, his last transmission a defiant burst of static. The loss of Echo, a loyal and skilled member, resonated deeply within Kestrel. He had averted total disaster, extracting Wraith and Spectre, but the mission had been irrevocably tainted. The betrayal confirmed his darkest suspicions. The enemy was not just Cerberus, a shadowy organization, but a cancer festering within the very intelligence apparatus he was now forced to work with. His rage, cold and precise, now had a new target, a new dimension. He knew with chilling certainty that he would not rest until he uncovered the traitor, the architect of Echo's demise. The grief over Echo's loss, coupled with the simmering fury of betrayal, propelled Kestrel into immediate, decisive action. He bypassed every official channel, every bureaucratic layer that might obstruct his path. His investigation into the internal leak began before the dust had settled from the compromised operation, a silent, relentless hunt for the snake within the Mossad. Spectre, still reeling from the events, but fueled by a shared thirst for retribution, became Kestrel's unwilling but essential accomplice. They worked in a secluded, undisclosed location, a digital fortress Spectre had hastily erected, far from prying eyes within the agency. Kestrel's methods were unorthodox, bordering on the illicit. He leveraged old contacts, shadowy figures from his mercenary past who owed him favors, and exploited vulnerabilities in secure networks that only someone of Spectre's caliber could penetrate. The coded message that had signaled the betrayal was their primary lead, a digital breadcrumb leading directly to its source. The trail was meticulously obscured, designed by someone intimately familiar with Mossad's security protocols, but not impenetrable to Kestrel's focused intensity and Spectre's digital prowess. Hours blurred into a grueling night, fueled by strong coffee and an unyielding resolve. As dawn broke, painting the sky with hues of bruised purple and gray, the identity of the traitor solidified. It was Asher Vance, a highly respected, seemingly incorruptible deputy director within Mossad, a man whose career had been built on a foundation of unwavering loyalty and strategic brilliance. The revelation sent a cold shock through Kestrel, confirming his deepest cynicism about institutional integrity. Vance, driven not by ideology in the traditional sense, but by an insidious blend of avarice and a twisted sense of self-preservation, had been feeding Cerberus intelligence for years, creating a symbiotic relationship of mutual benefit and protection. He had become profoundly corrupted, his once sterling reputation a meticulously crafted facade. Kestrel moved with surgical precision. There was no room for official protocols or lengthy interrogations. He confronted Vance alone in an isolated Mossad safe house, a place where their encounter would leave no traces. The air crackled with unspoken tension, the weight of Vance's treachery hanging heavy between them. Vance, initially defiant, his eyes flickering with a desperate arrogance, quickly understood the gravity of his situation. Kestrel's presence alone was a death sentence, his reputation for ruthless efficiency preceding him. The confrontation was swift, brutal, and devoid of sentimentality. Kestrel's questions were sharp, his gaze unwavering, demanding answers. Vance, under immense pressure and the undeniable threat of Kestrel's silent fury, began to unravel. He confessed to leveraging his position, selling highly sensitive intelligence not just to Cerberus, but to a network of global players who sought to destabilize geopolitical landscapes for their own gain. The information he reluctantly divulged painted a horrifying picture. Cerberus was merely a well-funded, highly effective operative arm, a tool in the hands of a much larger, more insidious cabal of powerful individuals and organizations. They were the shadowy puppet masters, pulling strings from behind the scenes, manipulating conflicts and markets with chilling impunity. Alara Cohen, when she received Kestrel's encrypted report detailing Vance's confession and the extent of the conspiracy, was utterly devastated. Her face, usually a mask of controlled composure, went pale with shock and a profound sense of guilt. The internal breach, the betrayal from within her own ranks, was a wound that cut deeper than any external threat. She felt responsible for Echo's death, for the erosion of trust, for allowing such corruption to fester under her watch. Yet, amidst her profound disillusionment, a fragile trust began to form between her and Kestrel. It was born not of shared ideals, but of shared adversity, a mutual understanding of the darkness they were up against and the desperate measures required to combat it. Kestrel, in his cold, uncompromising efficiency, had become her unlikely, indispensable ally. The revelation that Cerberus was merely a pawn in a far more sinister global game shifted their entire perspective. The mission had just become infinitely more complex and infinitely more dangerous. The unearthed truth about Vance's betrayal and the revelation of the true puppet masters behind Cerberus sent a chilling wave through Kestrel and his remaining team. Their enemy was no longer a shadowy terrorist group. It was a hydra with heads reaching into the highest echelons of power. The urgency intensified dramatically as intelligence channels, now purged of Vance's influence, began flooding with fragmented but alarming data. Cerberus, emboldened by their powerful patrons, was preparing their next move, a devastating, multi-pronged attack on a major global city. The target remained ambiguous, a ghost in the machine. But the impending scale of destruction was unequivocally clear. The world, oblivious to the machinations beneath its surface, hung precariously in the balance. Kestrel's team, though smaller, moved with renewed purpose, their resolve hardened by the recent betrayals and losses. Each member understood the stakes, the monumental task before them. Anya, the cyber warfare specialist, plunged into the labyrinthine networks of Cerberus, her fingers flying across keyboards, sifting through encrypted communications, looking for any anomaly, any pattern that could betray their target or methodology. Elias, the master of disguise and infiltration, vanished into the urban sprawl, his network of informants activated, seeking whispers in the underworld that might confirm the digital breadcrumbs Anya was finding. Their efforts were relentless, fueled by caffeine and an unyielding commitment to Kestrel, who, despite his stoic exterior, carried the weight of their lives and the world's fate on his shoulders. The race against time was palpable, a constant pressure beneath their skin. Days blurred into nights as they pieced together fragments of information. A coded exchange hinting at a specific chemical compound, a sudden spike in anonymous financial transactions tied to a certain region, a seemingly innocuous change in flight patterns, each detail, meticulously analyzed, began to paint a terrifying picture. They were close, agonizingly close to identifying the target city, but every lead felt like a tightrope walk over an abyss. There was a close call, a moment that almost derailed their painstaking progress. Anya, tracking a particularly elusive data packet, found herself ensnared in a sophisticated Cerberus counterattack, a digital trap designed to erase her presence and corrupt her findings. For a heart-stopping few minutes, her screens went dark, her systems unresponsive. Kestrel, watching over her shoulder, felt a cold dread grip him. Losing Anya, with her unique skills, would cripple their efforts. But her quick thinking, honed by years in the digital trenches, allowed her to sever the connection just as the malware began to propagate, saving their critical data, though the encounter left her shaken and visibly drained. The incident amplified the tension, a stark reminder of Cerberus's reach and their meticulous defenses. Amidst the relentless pressure, Kestrel faced a deeply personal moral dilemma. A faint, almost forgotten contact from his past, a woman he had once cared for deeply, resurfaced in the periphery of his intelligence. She was unknowingly entangled in Cerberus's peripheral operations, a pawn whose life could be inadvertently jeopardized by the impending mission. A fleeting thought of extraction, of warning her, flickered in his mind, a brief crack in his hardened exterior. It was a choice between the mission, the lives of millions, and a ghost from his personal history. The emotional toll was evident in the subtle clenching of his jaw, the brief clouding of his eyes. But the mission, the greater good, always came first. He chose the mission, pushing down the personal connection, the pang of regret a silent companion in his solitary burden. The clock was ticking, and Kestrel knew, with a chilling certainty, that the impossible choice was only the beginning. The final operation erupted with a ferocity that matched the urgency of their mission. Kestrel, a figure of grim resolve, moved with an almost supernatural precision, his commands cutting through the chaos like a honed blade. This wasn't merely a tactical assault, it was a multi-pronged offensive, coordinated across several key locations where Cerberus had established its operational hubs, each strike meticulously synchronized to prevent any possibility of their target escaping or executing their devastating plan. The team, a well-oiled machine forged in the crucible of countless shadows, executed their roles with chilling efficiency. Kestrel led the primary assault team, his presence a magnet for the most dangerous encounters. The air crackled with the staccato rhythm of gunfire, the metallic tang of spent casings, and the desperate shouts of Cerberus operatives. He moved through the labyrinthine corridors of a fortified warehouse, a ghost in the tactical gear, his movements fluid and deadly. Every decision was instantaneous, every action precise, reflecting years of training and an innate understanding of combat. He breached barricaded rooms, neutralized armed guards with disarming speed, and pushed relentlessly towards the heart of the operation. His focus was absolute, an unwavering laser beam cutting through the pandemonium. Amidst the intense firefight, a moment of heart-wrenching heroism unfolded. Elias, the master of infiltration, found himself cornered, providing cover for Anya as she worked frantically to disable a critical communications array. A wave of Cerberus reinforcements surged forward, their weapons blazing. Knowing Anya needed precious seconds to complete her task, Elias made a split-second decision. He threw himself into the path of the incoming fire, drawing their attention, a human shield absorbing the onslaught. His last conscious act was a defiant grin towards Anya, a silent promise kept. The array went dark, severing Cerberus's command and control, but the cost was profound. Kestrel, witnessing Elias's sacrifice from a distance, felt a cold fury ignite within him. It was a familiar ache, the brutal price of his life, but this time it was laced with a renewed, burning determination. He pushed harder, faster, his grief a powerful engine propelling him forward, past pain, past exhaustion. He carved a path through the remaining resistance, his movements a blur of controlled violence, each enemy falling before him, a silent tribute to Elias's memory. The mission was no longer just about preventing a global catastrophe. It was about honoring the fallen, about ensuring Elias's sacrifice was not in vain. Finally, Kestrel breached the inner sanctum, a sterile command center humming with disquieting energy. There, amidst screens displaying chilling countdowns and geographical projections, stood the operational leader of Cerberus. He was a man of cold, calculating eyes, his face etched with a history of ruthlessness. As their gazes locked, a jolt of recognition, bitter and unwelcome, shot through Kestrel. The Cerberus leader offered a chillingly familiar smile, a ghost from Kestrel's past, a specter he thought he had long buried. Kestrel. The man's voice was a low growl. Or should I say, brother. The words hung in the air, a poisoned dart striking Kestrel's deepest wounds. The man before him, the architect of this global terror, was not merely an adversary. He was a relic of Kestrel's forgotten life, a scar on his very soul. The revelation was a cruel twist of fate, intertwining the present global crisis with the raw, unresolved trauma of Kestrel's own personal history. The ultimate sacrifice had been made, but the final enemy was intrinsically linked to Kestrel's deepest, most guarded wounds, transforming the mission into a deeply personal reckoning. The air crackled with an unspoken history, thick with the weight of shared blood and divergent paths. Kestrel's hand instinctively tightened on his weapon, not in fear, but in a visceral shock that threatened to unravel his carefully constructed composure. His brother, a man he had mourned and buried in his mind decades ago, stood before him, the puppet master behind Cerberus. The revelation was a sucker punch to his gut, twisting the knife of Elias's sacrifice with a fresh, agonizing pain. This wasn't merely a mission now. It was a ghost from his past demanding reckoning. Brother? Kestrel's voice was a guttural rasp, laced with disbelief and a simmering rage that threatened to consume him. You've fallen far. The Cerberus leader, whose name Kestrel now remembered with a cold dread as Marius, merely chuckled, a sound devoid of warmth. Fallen? Or risen, perhaps? You always clung to the illusion of order, Kestrel. I saw the truth. Chaos is the only constant, and power is its master. Their battle began not with a grand gesture, but with a silent, almost telepathic understanding of each other's moves. It was a dance of death honed over years, each knowing the other's strengths, weaknesses, and preferred tactics. Marius was a mirror image of Kestrel's own lethal efficiency, but twisted, corrupted by an ideology that Kestrel found abhorrent. Their fight was brutal, a symphony of strikes and parries, each blow laden with years of unspoken resentment, forgotten affections, and profound betrayal. Kestrel fought with a calculated ferocity, driven by Elias's memory, by Anya's unwavering loyalty, and by the countless innocent lives Marius had threatened. Marius, however, fought with a chilling detachment, his eyes cold and devoid of recognition for the brother he once shared a childhood with. He moved with a snake-like grace, employing techniques Kestrel himself had taught him in their youth, now perverted for destructive ends. The command center became their arena, glass shattering, consoles sparking, the very structure groaning under the force of their personal war. Kestrel found himself anticipating Marius's moves, not just as an enemy operative, but as a sibling, a dangerous knowledge that both aided and hindered him. He saw glimmers of the boy Marius once was, the fierce protector, the loyal confidant, now buried beneath layers of fanaticism and ruthlessness. The fight culminated in a desperate struggle for a fallen blade, their hands locked, muscles straining, faces inches apart. Kestrel's eyes burned with a mixture of grief and an incandescent fury. This ends now, Marius, for Elias, for everyone. With a primal roar that tore from his very soul, Kestrel finally found the opening he needed. He disarmed Marius with a swift, brutal move, then slammed him against a control panel, the impact sending a jolt through the room. Marius gasped, his cold eyes finally flickering with something akin to fear, or perhaps a fleeting recognition of his brother's raw power. Kestrel held him there, the blade pressed against his throat, the decision hanging heavy in the air. His personal vendetta screamed for retribution, for the ultimate price, but the mission, the world, demanded that he rise above personal vengeance, that he extract information, that he secure the future. He saw the faces of his team, the sacrifice of Elias, the trust in Alara's eyes. This wasn't about vengeance alone. It was about redemption, about breaking the cycle of violence, even if it meant denying his own deepest, most agonizing desire. With a heavy sigh that carried the weight of years of silent suffering, Kestrel incapacitated Marius, knocking him unconscious with a precise clinical strike. The global threat was neutralized, Cerberus's leader captured, but the victory felt hollow, a bitter taste in his mouth. In the immediate aftermath, as Mossad teams swarmed the facility, securing evidence and tending to the wounded, Elara Cohen found Kestrel standing amidst the wreckage, his posture rigid, his gaze distant. She approached him cautiously, her face etched with a complex mix of relief, exhaustion, and profound admiration. "Kestrel," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper, "You did it. You saved us all." He turned to her, his eyes dark, haunted, reflecting the chaos he had just endured. The global threat was indeed neutralized, but the scars, both visible and invisible, remained. The cost had been immense, not just in lives lost, but in the pieces of himself Kestrel had sacrificed along the way. He had achieved victory, but the weight of his actions, the personal cost of confronting his past in such a brutal way, settled upon him like a shroud. He grappled with the hollow echo of triumph, the silence that followed the storm, wondering what was left of him after such a devastating reckoning. The mission was complete, the world was safe, but Kestrel knew, with chilling certainty, that victory came at a price, and his was yet to be fully paid. The world, blissfully unaware of the precipice from which it had been pulled, celebrated its continued peace, attributing it to collective efforts and diligent intelligence. Yet, in the clandestine corners of global security, whispers of an impossible mission and an improbable hero began to circulate, a legend forged in the crucible of desperation and sacrifice. Kestrel, however, did not linger to bask in the clandestine glow of his triumph. As swiftly and silently as he had re-emerged, he vanished, a ghost once more fading into the vast, indifferent shadows of the world he had just saved. His departure was marked not by fanfare but by the quiet click of a closing door, a final, almost imperceptible exhalation of breath. Elara Cohen watched him go, a profound sense of melancholy settling upon her. The operational success was undeniable, a monumental achievement that would reshape Mossad's standing and potentially global security for years to come. Yet the ethical compromises made, the lives lost, and the profound burden borne by Kestrel himself weighed heavily on her conscience. She knew the world would never truly comprehend the depth of his sacrifice, or the unique, often brutal, role he had played in averting catastrophe. He was a weapon, yes, but one wielded with a conscience, albeit a scarred and tormented one. He had done what no one else could, navigating the moral ambiguities with a grim determination that blurred the lines between hero and necessary evil. Even as Cerberus's network was systematically dismantled, the captured Marius providing invaluable, albeit grudging, intelligence, a chilling intuition lingered within Alara. The grander conspiracy, the shadowy puppet masters hinted at by Marius in his moments of delirium, felt far from fully eradicated. Cerberus had been a dangerous symptom, a virulent strain, but the underlying disease, the architects of global destabilization, remained elusive, lurking in the deeper recesses of power and influence. It was a sobering thought, a stark reminder that peace was a perpetual battle, not a definitive victory. Kestrel, meanwhile, found his way to a secluded coastal town, a place where the rhythmic crash of waves against ancient cliffs offered a semblance of solace. He carried no baggage, no visible ties to his past, only the indelible imprints of a life lived on the razor's edge. The quiet anonymity was a balm, allowing him to process the raw, jagged edges of his recent confrontation. He had faced his demons, literally, in the form of his brother, and had chosen duty over vengeance. That choice, while agonizing, had brought a strange, quiet redemption. He was no longer solely defined by loss and retribution. A flicker of purpose, born from genuine self-sacrifice, now burned within him. He spent his days walking the windswept beaches, the vast expanse of the ocean mirroring the boundless emptiness he sometimes felt, yet also offering a sense of perspective. He watched the fishing boats return, their crews weary but content, and sometimes he would stop to observe the children playing, their laughter a pure, untainted sound that rarely reached his world. He was forever changed, the echoes of Elias's sacrifice and Marius's betrayal woven into the very fabric of his being. The weight of his actions, the lives he had saved, and the ones he couldn't, would always be a part of him. The closing image of Kestrel was one of quiet contemplation. He stood on a solitary cliff overlooking the churning sea, the setting sun painting the horizon in hues of orange and purple. His face, etched with the lines of experience and loss, held a new, subtle serenity. He was alone, but no longer lost. The mission was over, the immediate threat averted, but the fight for peace, he knew, was an eternal one. His legacy would be a legend whispered in the clandestine world, a phantom protector who emerged from the shadows when all hope seemed lost, a testament to the enduring, complex nature of heroism in an imperfect world. And as the last rays of sunlight dipped below the horizon, Kestrel turned, walking towards an uncertain future, a silent sentinel against the darkness that would inevitably rise again.